I had never believed in ghosts, spirits, or the supernatural, unlike many around me. To me, those were just products of imagination, stories crafted to scare or intrigue. But in the autumn of 2012, when I was a junior history major at Boston University, everything changed. And I must recount this story to warn others. Never play with what you don't understand. It was a late weekend evening, the air crisp and cold, the dim yellow street lamps flickering weakly through the old dorm window. My friends and I gathered for a relaxed night, or so we thought. Sarah, a classmate obsessed with all things supernatural, suggested we try a Ouija board game. It's just a game, to feel some thrills, you know, she said with sparkling eyes. Mark, my closest friend, always up for jokes and challenges, chimed in. I heard it's pretty creepy, but it's just a game. Who's brave enough? Lily, the shy, quiet one, only nodded softly, while James, an art student and horror movie fanatic, laughed. Let's do it. How else will we know? We decided to play in an abandoned classroom on the second floor of the art building near the dorm. The room was unused for years, thick with dust, cracked walls, and a heavy musty smell. We brought an old Ouija board Sarah recently bought online, tarot cards, and some candles to set the mood. We all thought it was just harmless fun after a stressful week. Entering the room, the cold, gloomy atmosphere gave me a chill, but everyone tried to act casual, joking to dispel the uneasy feeling. We placed the Ouija board on the creaky wooden table, sitting in a circle. Sarah lit the candles, their flickering light dancing on the cracked walls. Everyone placed their fingers lightly on the small pointer of the Ouija board, following Sarah's instructions. Okay, let's start, she said. Ask a simple question. Who wants to go first? Mark spoke up. Is anyone here? The pointer began moving slowly, as if pushed by an invisible force, gradually sliding to the word yes. Everyone laughed it off. Must be the wind, James joked. But I noticed a flicker of doubt in his eyes. We continued asking simple questions at first, easy to guess, like what is your name, or are you a good spirit? The pointer moved smoothly, answering clearly, but some questions stunned us. The pointer answered things none of us knew, even secrets only a few were aware of. The atmosphere grew heavier. I felt the shift. Sarah looked at me, her eyes more serious than usual. Maybe we're not just playing a game anymore. The moment the pointer slid over the word yes, a strange silence fell across the room. What was meant to be a prank suddenly felt weighty, as if an unseen presence had stepped in among us. All right, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling slightly. Let's ask something else. We all placed our fingers on the pointer again. This time, James asked, in a shaky voice, what is your name? The pointer moved deliberately, spelling out a name none of us recognized, Emma or Raya. No one spoke for a moment. I glanced around the circle, catching worried glances exchanged between Mark and Lily. Sarah, however, looked captivated, leaning closer. Maybe it's the spirit of this building, she murmured, or someone connected to this room. I tried to shake off the chill creeping up my spine. It was easy to laugh it off, but a part of me felt unsettled. We kept asking questions, simple, harmless questions. The pointer responded with eerie accuracy. Are you friendly? Mark asked. Why yes. Do you want us to leave? No. The pointer hovered, then moved firmly to stay. The room felt colder, the flickering candlelight casting long, dancing shadows on the cracked walls. A faint smell of damp earth seemed to seep from the corners. Suddenly, the pointer started moving on its own. Faster this time, spelling out a chilling message. You should not be here. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. We all froze, our fingers lingering awkwardly on the pointer. Let's stop, Lily whispered, her voice barely audible, eyes wide with fear. But before we could lift our hands, the pointer darted rapidly across the board, spelling, leave or suffer. A heavy silence followed. Then, Lily's breath hitched, and she began to cry softly, tears streaming down her face. What's wrong, Lily? Sarah asked, concern growing in her voice. But Lily didn't answer. Instead, her voice shifted low, rough, and unfamiliar. Get out, now. The room's temperature dropped drastically. I could see our breath misting in the air. Mark jumped up, knocking over a candle. Flames licked the cracked wall, casting grotesque shadows. Enough of this, he shouted. We're done. We quickly removed our hands, extinguished the candles, and fled the room. Outside, the normal noises of the campus seemed impossibly loud. Footsteps, distant laughter, the hum of traffic. But inside me, the unease lingered. I could not forget the words spelled out on the board, or Lily's strange voice. Over the next few days, none of us wanted to talk about that night. But the experience clung to us, dark and persistent. Sarah became obsessed, researching the history of the building. She discovered that the art classroom was once the site of a tragic accident. A young woman named Maria, a student, had died there decades ago, under mysterious circumstances. Lily, meanwhile, started to change. She was quieter, withdrawn, and sometimes spoke in voices that were not her own. Mark joked to hide his fear, but I could see the shadows under his eyes growing deeper. One night, I awoke to find Lily standing at the foot of my bed, eyes black as coal. She whispered in a voice that wasn't hers, "You shouldn't have stayed." I jolted awake, heart pounding. The shadows in my room seemed to twist and writhe like living things. The game had begun, and we had no idea what we had unleashed. Days after that night in the abandoned classroom felt like walking through a thick fog. Everything was muted, distorted, and tinged with dread. What we had thought was just a harmless prank was no longer just a game. Lily was the first to show signs that something was terribly wrong. It started subtly. She would stare blankly at walls, not responding to our calls. Her laughter turned brittle and hollow. Sometimes, when no one else was around, I could hear her whispering to herself, in a voice that didn't belong to her. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we were gathered at Sarah's dorm room trying to piece together what was happening. The air was heavy, and the only light came from a flickering desk lamp. Suddenly, Lily burst into tears, her body trembling violently. Then, her voice changed. It deepened, rough and guttural. "Leave, now, or suffer," she growled, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. We all jumped back, frozen in place. It was as if a different entity had taken over her body. Sarah rushed to her side, trying to comfort her, but Lily pushed her away with unnatural strength. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw shadowy figures lurking just beyond the edges of my vision, whispering my name in chilling tones. The next day, Sarah came to me with a thick book she'd borrowed from the university library. Old local folklore and accounts of haunted places in Boston. She told me about restless spirits, about how certain places could trap souls, how some entities could possess the living. "We have to help Lily," she said, "but I don't know if we're prepared for what that might mean." Our group grew, tense, wary of one another. James, once the skeptic, confessed he had heard strange noises in his apartment, footsteps pacing at midnight, knocks on the walls, and shadowy figures glimpsed from the corner of his eyes. Mark avoided talking about the night entirely, but I could see his hands trembling when he thought no one was watching. One night, we gathered again, this time not for fun, but to confront what we had unleashed. We set up candles, crossed our fingers, and cautiously placed our hands back on the Ouija board. The room was silent, except for the faint crackling of the flames. The pointer moved almost instantly, spelling words with terrifying clarity. "We are here." Then, "You disturbed us." The pointer circled frantically, as if angry. Suddenly, the temperature plummeted. Our breaths formed clouds in the air. The candles flickered wildly and then went out, plunging us into darkness. A low growl echoed from the corners of the room. The faint outline of a shadow coalesced near the wall, shifting and twisting. Lily screamed, not her voice, but a voice that was deep and chilling. "You will pay." We fled the room in terror, but the feeling of being watched, hunted, clung to us like a dark cloak. In the days that followed, Lily was hospitalized for unexplained convulsions. The doctors found no physical cause. Sarah arranged for a spiritual healer, a woman who claimed to communicate with restless spirits. The healer told us that the spirit we contacted was not at rest. It was bound by pain and anger, a presence that wanted to be free, but also wanted revenge. We were warned that meddling further could bring more harm, but we had already crossed the line. Our lives were no longer our own. The aftermath of that dreadful night was like waking up trapped in a nightmare that wouldn't end. What had started as a silly game quickly unraveled into a nightmare that clawed at our sanity and physical well-being. The day after Lily was admitted to the hospital, the group barely held itself together. Her face was pale and drawn, and though the doctors ruled out any physical illness, it was clear something was terribly wrong. Sarah, overwhelmed and desperate, spent hours scouring old archives and university records, trying to find any clues. about the spirit named Maria that we had contacted. Mark and James avoided talking about the experience, burying themselves in their studies or distractions, but the fear in their eyes betrayed their calm facades. For me, sleep became a stranger. Night after night, I was haunted by vivid nightmares, visions of dark, twisted hallways, cold hands gripping my arms, whispers in a language I couldn't understand. One night, as I sat alone in my dorm room, the lights flickered violently before plunging the room into darkness. A cold breeze brushed past me, carrying the faint scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic. Like old blood, I heard a faint voice whisper my name, drawing me toward the door. My heart pounded in my chest as I forced myself to turn on my phone's flashlight, but the room was empty. Lily's condition worsened in the following days. She would wake up screaming, her eyes wide with terror, muttering incoherent phrases that sent chills down our spines. The healer Sarah found came to the hospital. She performed rituals, burning herbs, chanting prayers, and trying to communicate with whatever force was tormenting Lily. After one session, Lily suddenly calmed, but the healer warned us, the spirit is restless. It has been disturbed, and it will not leave his. Meanwhile, strange incidents began to plague the rest of us. Mark's apartment was vandalized overnight, walls scratched with symbols no one could recognize. James found cryptic messages etched into his mirror, appearing and disappearing like smoke. Sarah reported seeing shadowy figures lurking outside her window late at night. We were trapped in a nightmare of our own making, and no one seemed able to help. One evening, the four of us gathered at Sarah's apartment to discuss what to do next. We have to end this, Sarah insisted. But how? We don't even know what we're dealing with. James shook his head. I don't want to believe this is real, but it's happening. Mark, pale and tense, added, we should have never touched that board. I looked around at their haunted faces, realizing we were in deeper than any of us had imagined. And then Lily's voice came through the phone from the hospital, flat and unfamiliar. You can't escape. The line went dead. Fear settled over us like a thick fog. We knew our lives had changed forever. The days after Lily's hospitalization became a slow descent into madness for all of us. The boundaries between reality and nightmare blurred, and each night brought horrors none of us could have imagined. Lily's room in the hospital was suffocatingly cold, the kind of cold that seemed to seep into your bones. Even with layers of blankets, she trembled incessantly. At times her eyes would snap open suddenly, glowing faintly in the dim light, her voice dropping into that deep, guttural tone that chilled me to the core. She's trapped, the spiritual healer told us. One evening, this spirit is bound by rage and sorrow. To free her, we must understand its pain. Meanwhile, each of us suffered from relentless nightmares. I saw shadowy figures with hollow eyes reaching out from dark corners, whispering my name, promising torment. Mark dreamt of being chased through endless, twisting hallways, always hearing footsteps behind him, but never seeing who or what followed. Sarah's dreams were filled with faces she didn't recognize, eyes bleeding black tears. James awoke, screaming after visions of his own reflection melting away into darkness. One night, Sarah found an old diary hidden in the university archives, written by a young woman named Maria who had studied art in the same building decades earlier. The diary chronicled Maria's despair, her struggles with depression, and her mysterious disappearance never explained, never solved. We realized the spirit was Maria, desperate for release but bound by unresolved pain. The healer organized several seances trying to communicate directly with Maria's spirit. During one intense session, Lily's body convulsed violently as the spirit fought for control. Voices echoed through the room, alternating between pleas for mercy and terrifying threats. The air thickened, and objects began to move on their own. We were caught in a battle between the living and the dead. Despite the healer's efforts, the possession worsened. Lily's personality flickered moments of lucidity, shattered by bouts of rage and despair. Her family considered transferring her to a psychiatric hospital, but we knew this was no ordinary illness. One night, I sat by Lily's bedside, holding her trembling hand. Her eyes opened slowly. For a fleeting moment, I saw the girl I knew, the scared, gentle Lily, before her gaze darkened again. "Help me," she whispered, voice breaking. We had to find a way to put Maria's spirit to rest. But the longer we stayed entangled with this dark presence, the more we realized the danger was far from over. After the terrifying spiritual battles, we realized that to save Lily and ourselves, we had to uncover the dark history behind the room and the spirit that haunted us. Sarah and I spent hours digging through old university archives, dusty records, and faded newspaper clippings. The truth slowly emerged, painting a grim picture. Decades ago, the art building's abandoned classroom was a place of tragedy. A student named Maria Ellis, brilliant but troubled, had vanished without explanation in the fall of 1967. Her disappearance was shrouded in mystery. Some whispered she'd been involved in occult rituals. Others claimed she was driven mad by a secret no one dared speak of. One chilling article detailed a police investigation where Maria was last seen performing a Ouija session alone. Desperate to contact her deceased mother, witnesses reported strange lights and screams coming from the building that night. Maria was never found. The room had been closed off soon after, left to rot and be forgotten. But clearly, something had never left. As we learned more, strange occurrences escalated. At night, the air around Sarah's apartment grew thick and suffocating. Shadows danced at the edges of our vision. Doors slammed shut on their own. Phones emitted static-filled voices that no one could decipher. One evening, we returned to the abandoned classroom, determined to confront whatever lingered. Equipped with candles, recording devices, and the healer's amulets, we stepped inside. The decaying room, the silence was oppressive. Placing the Ouija board on the table, we joined hands once more. The pointer jerked wildly, spelling, "Why do you disturb me?" Sarah asked, voice steady but trembling. "Maria, what do you want?" "From us." The pointer moved slowly. "To be free, to be heard, to end the pain." Suddenly, the room's temperature plunged. Our breaths fogged the air. A deep, mournful wail echoed from the walls, vibrating the floor beneath our feet. Without warning, Lily's body convulsed violently. Her eyes flashed black as the spirit surged, roaring in rage and sorrow. The healer began chanting, waving herbs and talismans, trying to hold the spirit back. The shadowy figure of Maria appeared, a silhouette, flickering like a candle flame, face twisted in anguish. She pointed accusingly at the room, then at us. "We desecrated her suffering," Sarah whispered. "We woke something better left asleep." The spirit unleashed a wave of cold, pushing us back. Objects flew off shelves. The candles blew out, plunging us into darkness. We staggered out of the room, gasping for air, our hearts pounding. But in the midst of terror, we realized what Maria needed was acknowledgement, a way to tell her story, to find peace. We vowed to uncover every detail of her life, to help her finally rest. But the spirit's anger warned us. The path ahead would be perilous, and some truths were better left buried. We had uncovered Maria's tragic story, but knowing it didn't mean we were free. The spirit's wrath was far from quenched. In fact, it felt like the more we tried to help, the stronger it became. The weeks that followed were the darkest time of our lives. Lily's condition slowly improved, but scars remained. Her mind fractured, her soul haunted. She was never the same again. Sarah and Mark decided to leave Boston, desperate to escape the nightmare. James withdrew completely, his once bright eyes now hollow and haunted. I stayed behind, driven by a mix of guilt and determination. One night, I returned to the old classroom alone, carrying Maria's diary and a candle. The room was silent, but I felt eyes on me, cold, accusing. I lit the candle and read aloud the last pages of the diary, Maria's final words, a plea for forgiveness and peace. The air grew still. For a moment, I thought I saw a faint smile flicker across the shadowed corner. But then, the Ouija board's pointer began moving by itself. Slowly, it spelled, "You can't leave." The door slammed shut. The candle flickered and died. I was plunged into darkness. Voices whispered from all directions, angry, desperate, sorrowful. The walls seemed to close in. I stumbled forward, heart pounding, breath ragged. Suddenly, a cold hand grasped my wrist. "Why do you stay?" A voice echoed in my mind. "Why do you not run?" I didn't have an answer. Days later, my friends found me wandering near the old building, pale and disoriented. I told them the truth. The spirit would not let me go. The university sealed off the classroom permanently. Lily's family moved her away for long-term care. And me, I carry this story as a warning. Do not play with things you do not understand. Do not summon forces that do not wish to be disturbed, because some games do not end, and some spirits never rest. It's been years since that night, years since the game that changed my life forever. I tell you this not to scare you, but to warn you. Some doors, once opened, can never be closed. I've tried to move on, to bury the past deep inside me, but shadows lurk just beyond the edges of my vision, whispering reminders that some things do not forgive. The Ouija board, it's locked away in a box, buried in the back of my closet. But sometimes, when the room is still, I feel it calling, a faint tapping, a soft scratching, like a voice begging to be heard. I asked myself why we were chosen to encounter this darkness. Was it curiosity, foolishness, or fate? What I know now is simple. There are forces beyond us, ancient, restless, and merciless. They do not welcome visitors, so if you ever come across a Ouija board, or hear whispers in the dead of night, or see shadows flicker where there should be none, remember my story. Do not touch, do not ask. Don't. Whatever you do, do not play the game, because once you start, there may be no turning back.
Thank you for following.